right, we certainly do want to see this strategic intervention plans kicking off, and we want to see that it takes, has a positive impact on the economy and can flow down to the average man. Now, moving away from Nigeria, let's head to Uganda. The U.S. Department of State, Labor, Health and Human Services and Commerce and the U.S. Agency for International Development has issued a business advisory for Uganda, saying that businesses faced potential risks in the African country, citing an anti-LGBTQ law condemned by many countries and the United Nations. The United States considers Uganda's anti-LGBTQ law as one of the harshest in the world, enacted in May, and carries the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality, an offense that includes transmitting HIV through gay sex.
Now, Uganda's anti-LGBTQ law drew condemnation from Western governments, including Washington, and put in jeopardy some of the billions of dollars in foreign aid the country received each year, which has not deterred President Yoweri Museveni from ensuring that the country's law does not change. Now, firms including media and non-governmental organizations that normally promote LGBTQ activity will incur harsh fines, the law says. The law also imposes a life sentence for same-sex intercourse and a 20-year sentence for promotion of homosexuality.
Honorable members of the press, I want to read a short statement to explain this issue. It seemed the topic of homosexuals was provoked by the arrogant and careless Western groups that are fond of coming into our schools and recruiting young children into homosexuality and lesbianism, just as they carelessly handle other issues concerning Africa. Initially, I did not pay much attention to it because I was busy with the immediate issues of defense, security, electricity, the roads, the railways, factories, modernization of agriculture, etc., etc. When eventually I concentrated my mind on it, I distilled three problems. Number one, those who were promoting homosexuality and recruiting normal people into it. Because apparently there were groups who were deliberately doing that, recruiting people who are not homosexual into homosexuality. Secondly, as a consequence of number one above, many of those recruited were doing so for mercenary reasons, to get money. In effect, homosexual prostitutes. These mercenary homosexual prostitutes had to be punished, just like those who were recruiting them.
Well, just for clarity, we did have a conversation a while ago, and I think it's one of the things that our guest would also be clarifying for us. If the conversation or the law in Uganda was blown out of proportion to make it seem like it was a completely anti-LGBTQ law, or it's different. Now, joining us from the eastern part of the continent, we have Daron Bartlet to share with us what's going on here. Good morning, Daron. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. How are you doing?
We're fantastic. Great to see you this morning. Now, in June, the United States Department imposed visa restrictions on Ugandan officials after the passage of the law. The State Department also updated its Uganda travel guidance for the United States citizens to highlight the risk that LGBTQ persons could be prosecuted and subjected to life imprisonment or the death penalty based on provisions in the law. Why, first of all, is the United States failing to honor the laws of the Ugandan people and its government? That's one. And then also, just add to what I was initially saying, is the Ugandan laws, are they being blown out of proportion to be more than what they actually are?
You want to understand what the gay law is or LGBT, is that you have to understand or read the law itself, because everyone will agree for people who understand the law, is that it was blown out of proportion, and the context has been understood quite differently. And let's go to understanding what the president was actually addressing there. I don't know if you just.
Of course, they're still speaking with Daron Bartlet from the East Africa. Of course, he's sharing with us what the truth is with regards to the Ugandan LGBTQ laws. In an initial conversation we had months ago when this broke, it turns out from that conversation that the laws may have been blown out of proportion and seem to be more than they are. And they are not necessarily anti-LGBTQ or inciting violence or hate or jail time against anyone who is lesbian or gay or trans or anything in Uganda. From what I understood back then, it seemed like it was a law simply created to maybe also protect kids from violent LGBTQ practices and all of that. But of course, we hope that Daron Bartlet will be able to explain it further for us once we establish better connection. Daron, can you go ahead? Sorry, we lost you for a second.
Sorry, I had to change my position because of the network. It was a little bit disturbing me, but I think yes, now we can continue. I was talking about the law and saying that look, so this is what the report. This has indicated is being recruited into the law. So let's focus on the words of the president that he was saying. He says, one, the recruitment and promotion of LGBT. Recruitment was done in schools mostly. We saw some of reading materials that actually encouraged homosexuality being inserted in school libraries, especially primary schools at some level. Police came out and did a research and an investigation and discovered that some schools actually had material that was promoting LGBT content. And also, police itself has a statement that it made, and the law was signed actually in June, and saying that they had obtained of adults recruiting young children into the habit of LGBT and paying them some money for that. And also, there was one who was on a wanted list. He actually from school for students LGBT. They have also assemblies that have been put in place. Organized before, and they were encouraged. I think if we focus on what the president was saying and the actual intention of this law, then we actually get the context under which it was being put up. So I don't want to believe that what is said by the government of the United States is actually too factual. But yes, they have a concern as the United States government issuing a warning to its citizens, telling them about the law, and not about it. It could be one of the most harsh laws in the world. I mean, if you remove the Middle East, the Arabic countries, and those are actually way harsh than what you think about in Uganda. So the law has been blown out of proportion because we need to look at the ingredients of it. What actually makes these laws have recruitment and promotion of such content? I mean, as a person who works in the media house, we've also had casting content that is that promotes LGBT. That is the biggest concern of the government. But again, I always say we need to look back at the precedents. Do we have people who have been persecuted under this law since it was signed in place? Not yet. So yes, I believe that it was actually blown out of proportion. And maybe the USA government is just trying to know that for them, being a member of the LGBT community is okay. And most likely you may find yourself as an American expressing yourself of who you are publicly. So it has warning stand this is not how you are going to be member, but you may not be allowed to behave a certain way. I can give so many examples of countries where you were allowed to behave a certain way. You go to Zanzibar, you're not allowed to plait your hair if you're a man. You're not allowed to, to behave in an LGBT manner because predominantly it's an Islamic country, even if you go to Qatar or Saudi Arabia or other countries. So I think it's the most important thing is for the members, the citizens of the USA to understand the contents of the law rather than just believe that you gender LGBT.
Well, some rights groups have called this law cruel, thus maybe in some way potentially limiting aid to the East African country. Would you say that there's an agenda for the Western world regarding, quote unquote, the promotion of LGBTQ in non-conformist nations? Earlier in the year, we also did see that there were conversations about the US potentially refusing to grant visas to countries where, especially in Uganda, for example, where they had these anti-gay laws. So we'd like to find out what your thoughts are concerning the US and the Western world in some measure promoting this in non-conformist nations.
Olivia, it's no secret that their government of Americans actually imposed some restrictions on some Ugandan officials, like the Speaker of Parliament found herself when they had recalled her visa. Still had time for her, if she wanted to visit America, she would have. But that visa was recalled and she was asked to reapply in case she wants to actually visit USA. What does that mean? And what was the timing of that recalling of that visa? Plus some other officials who didn't come out to be pronounced in public. But yes, there was that restriction that was placed on them. But if we are to go by how many people have let's assume our parliament is about 520 something members of parliament. So if you come out and impose on about 500 and something officers, or government officials not to be able to apply for for a visa to America, there are quite a lot of them. So there could be a few of it, including some government officials, but the one we know mostly is the Speaker of Parliament, because it was not even a secret. They came out and put it out there. But are the Americans trying to promote their agenda in the African continent, especially Uganda? I would say yes and no. This is a sovereign state that it recognizes its culture, different cultures, about 54 cultures in the country, and they practice differently. So the most important thing is that if the government protects its cultures, and one of them is not to accept LGBT practices in the country, then I think we have to be respected and its laws, because 500 and something members of parliament and say, who represent the people of Uganda and say no to LGBT in Uganda and pass the law, it means they represent the interests of the people. So we've seen a number of things come up, organizing marches, clubs, catch-ups, and all these things by the LGBT community, investing, of course. But I can assure you, and as far as I know, that this country has never prosecuted anybody who practices homosexuality. It means that they actually exist, but they do it in private, because several times, even the president himself, President Yoweri, before even passing this law, the first law that was enacted against the LGBT, which was then nullified by the High Court, he kept on saying that, why would you like to put your personal business in the public? If you and your wife, or you and whoever you're doing this thing with, you're doing it separately in your bedrooms, the same way no one comes out to announce that a husband and wife have actually had an intercourse, then why would you bring your private affair to the public? No one comes out to promote that a man should sleep with a woman in public. So why should you come out in public and promote why a man should sleep with a man? So we have certain set of values that we put across, and we also need to understand what the law actually says, rather than just take it at a face value and say Uganda has the most harsh laws against LGBT.
All right,
yes,
Daron.
It does, but we need to come down on the ground and understand what exactly is on the ground.
All right. Well, these are conversations that don't affect just Uganda, but unfortunately, they're the ones in the spotlight currently, with the United States and its LGBT, notions across the world. But we'll see how this turns out over time. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Always interested in speaking with you and hearing your perspective.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I miss you guys.
All right.